Hey, what's up everyone? Welcome back to another edition of the Adam Eisen Show. I'm back here today to bring you all episode 25. A massive show is planned, so I'm not going to waste much time getting into it. Starting it off today, like usual, we're going to take a look at some of the NFL news which dropped in this past week. Now, Stefon Diggs' contract is where I wanted to start today because I think it speaks a lot about where the salary cap and where the market is going for players and for teams. Now, you guys saw his contract, 4 years, $96 million. He's got incentives, got guaranteed money. It's a great contract, and everyone here knows I'm a fan of players getting paid, players going out and get the money they deserve, taking as much money away from these owners as possible. But the wide receiver now, at this point in this year, is going absurd, and I'm concerned about the long-term effects that is going to come from this. Now, we know Stefon Diggs, he's going to be with Buffalo throughout the rest of his career. I'm not saying he doesn't deserve his contract, but what I am saying is, with contracts like this one, Devontae Adams, Tyreek Hill, Christian Kirk's with the Jags. When that contract came along, I began to get worried. And again, I'm not saying that Diggs does not deserve this money. But right now, the top wide receivers are getting paid more than what the top quarterbacks were getting paid in 2015, 2016. I remember when Matthew Stafford signed his $22 million deal in 2014, and everybody was losing their minds. Now, with wide receivers such as Tyreek Hill taking up 13.9% of the cap space in some of the years that he's going to be playing with the Dolphins, it will eventually make a scenario where everything is overinflated and teams will become structured extremely poorly due to contracts being loaded on two players extremely heavily. I've said it, I'm a fan of players getting paid. But it has primarily been for years that the quarterback has taken up a lot of the salary cap, which I'm not a fan of. Money should be dispersed. While the quarterback is your point guard, he is your guy. Now we come here where quarterbacks, they take up about 12.5% of your cap space. Wide receivers and their deals, the way they're going, if wide receivers are now also starting to take up 12.5% of a cap, how do you structure a championship winning team if you have an elite quarterback and an elite wide receiver? They're taking up 25% of your cap space now. With only one player on the team, like it has been for decades, the quarterback taking up so much money, you can make it work. But with wide receivers now also taking a big chunk of the pie, unless you have some masterminds inside your organizations like the Rams, you won't get by. Which takes me to my next topic today, which is the Rams. And their front office, the Rams as an organization, and what they do differently. I was thinking this past week about something when I was writing my notes for this week and trying to figure out some topics. Throughout life, I realized many of us feel confident when looking at professionals in any given field, whether it be auto, medical, coming to me, like y'all are watching me for sports advice, whether you're turning on the Weather Channel for the morning weather, whatever it may be. You go to professionals to be confident on any given topic. And I think people naturally believe that all GMs, head coaches, and owners of teams are smart and know what they're doing. There's this reluctancy here to where everybody automatically assumes that these guys know what they're doing. But in reality, and this was the click for me this past week, many organizations don't see the bigger picture. Or there's often a disconnect among the three, owner, GM, and head coach. Or maybe they can't adapt to the changing ways of the NFL. I've talked about it all the time. The NFL is always changing. which after watching what the Rams have done over the last few seasons, and now this offseason, I think it is extremely obvious that there are tiers to these organizations inside the front offices, with the Los Angeles Rams being one of the smartest that the NFL has ever seen. There are 3 things you need to run an amazing organization. An owner, Stan Kroenke for the Rams, with money, who will release the reins to the GM and do whatever it takes to win, but also know that he's not the football guy and he needs to trust his guy. Number 2, a GM in Les Snead, who is young, smart, and looking for new ways to manipulate the cap, which he is putting on another fine display of this offseason with signings like Allen Robinson. And a head coach in Sean McVay to tie all that together with a pretty bow who is talented, young, and can relate to his players and be there to build a dynasty throughout the decades. He's also installed a new system of football across the league in only his 30s. He's incredibly young. The Rams have all 3 parts to what you need to have a great organization. And my take here is people often have reluctancy to doubt people in power or with authority. They don't want to go out and doubt people with authority. But after watching the masterclass the Rams have put on now, season after season, with their market manipulation and ability to wow players, it puts it into perspective just how much the front office really does matter in this league. There's tiers to everything. In everything in life, there's tiers. And the Rams are at the top of the front office tiers. Like I was saying with the wide receiver caps and them taking up so much, the Rams have 2 of the top 10 paid wide receivers in the NFL. Cooper Kupp and Allen Robinson. They have 2 of the top 10. And yet, they have a mastermind in the front office, Les Snead, orchestrating all this. They have an owner who's willing to release the reins and give the guys that he hired to do this job the power. And he's got a head coach who's young and can relate to his players and ties it all together with a neat, pretty bow. I'm going to jump over, shifting to my next topic today, which is going to be staying in the NFC West. What is happening in San Francisco right now? Many of you guys have seen Deebo Samuel. There was an Instagram fiasco with him earlier this week. He's a very unique player. There's might not be one guy in the entire league like him. But earlier this week, he took to Instagram and removed all of his 49ers stuff. He unfollowed them on Instagram, took them out of his bio. And it's another example of a trend among athletes which is growing. It's taking their voices to social media. Running to your social media is not the best thing to do in any circumstance, especially when you're getting paid millions of dollars. He's still on his final year of his rookie deal, and this is a business. Deebo, Kyler, Baker Mayfield, the second a little bump comes up in contract talks, they run to social media and make some harsh or rash thing. And it's a bad look, and it does not show that you're grown up and can play in the grown-ups league. There's a reason why, even though Baker Mayfield is more talented, less injury prone, and is less money, he still won't be a starting quarterback week 1 of the season. It's character, guys. People's personalities play a part in teams in this league, and no one should forget about that. And what Deebo Samuel is doing is not smart at all. He's forgetting this is a business and putting himself and his character first. How a player acts and deals with emotion is just as crucial as numbers on a piece of paper to me. And I want everyone that is just going and saying this, they gotta pay him, he's amazing, oh, just pay him. You can't do that. It is a business. He wants to get paid top of the market money, which we've talked about already on today's show. The market is going downhill, And there's a trap that is getting set 5 to 10 years from now. A lot of teams are going to find themselves without money. San Francisco sees that. He wants to get paid top of the market. And I want you to think about this if you ran the San Francisco 49ers. He plays both running back and receiver. He gets hurt a lot. Plays one way of football. Never played a full season. And 2 years ago, he only played 7 games. The second thing is, George Kittle is your only other dynamic offensive player. And he's also expensive, and he also gets hurt a lot. Look at the Rams on offense. Stafford, Kupp, Jefferson, Robinson, who all don't get hurt. And the 49ers have to play the Rams twice a year. They don't want to build their teams around injuries. And if you sign him for big money, think about the Niners' 4 big players. Trent Williams, expensive with injuries. Garoppolo, Kittle, and Samuel, who on any given week could be unavailable. Then the Rams have Aaron Donald, Jalen Ramsey, Cooper Kupp, Matthew Stafford, Van Jefferson, Allen Robinson, all these guys who aren't going to get hurt and you can rely on and have always been there for him. The way he plays as well, he's old school, he takes a lot of big hits, plays hard, plays fast, and the Niners don't want to risk building their team on a bunch of injuries. If you guys look at the history for the Niners since about 2016, what has it been about every other year? An injury-riddled year, whether it be with Jimmy G, George Kittle, all these guys. They couldn't get a quarterback for 3 to 4 years straight. If I were the Niners, I would personally franchise tag him and not pay him early. You got to make sure that he's going to be able to keep up the numbers he did last year. And in a salary cap league, this isn't MLB. There isn't just any unlimited number. There's a lot of things GMs have to think about. It's not just as easy as pay him. Now, moving on today, jumping off the NFL, I want to go over NCAA championship was earlier this week. Monday night, the Kansas Jayhawks men's basketball team won it all over the UNC Tar Heels. I want to send a big congratulations. Kansas head coach Bill Self, it's his second title, and after the 2020 season that was dismantled due to the coronavirus, and Kansas having not arguably, for sure, the number 1 best team in 2020, and then not even getting a shot to play. It's good for them to come back out here a few years later and get the win. The win, in my opinion, came down to the Tar Heels having a lack of depth. It's what I said last week right before the Final Four tipped off, that if the 49ers did lose this thing, it would be due to lack of depth. And after Baycott went down, it was a different game. He went down against Duke, and then UNC, he looked good. He looked good throughout the game. He went down. There was other injuries, foul trouble. UNC did not have the depth, and Kansas straight up just battled back, similar to the way that Baylor did against UNC in the second round. Except this time, Kansas was able to close it out, unlike Baylor was able to do. Kansas, they were clearly the better team. They deserved it after the 2020 season. UNC had a great run, but the depth finally caught up with them, especially with as physical of a team as Kansas is, who, you guys know, Kansas plays in the Big 12. A defensive conference, battle-tested. They've played all throughout the year with tough games like this, and Kansas came out the better team on top. Good thing for UNC fans is UNC will be back. Many early polls already are showing them being a favorite for next year. And for this being Hubert Davis's first season as head coach, they have a great story ahead of them, just like Kansas has with Bill Self, just like Coach K did with Duke. Hubert Davis is here to bring a great story to UNC and the Tar Heels, so no one should be discouraged if you're a Tar Heels fan. They were an 8 seed. No one expected this to happen. And Kansas deserved the championship this year. UNC will be back, however. Transferring on today, I'm jumping into the NBA a little bit. I want to talk about the Lakers and LeBron. You guys know that the season it's shut down for the Lakers. They are out of the playoff contention, and Frank Vogel is going to get fired at the end of this season. And I do not at all think that Frank Vogel is the whole problem. The only way to solve a problem, for one, is to first identify what it is. Russell Westbrook is a 15-year veteran guard who can't shoot. Injuries happen all over this league. And all the teams that have gotten injuries throughout this year, Golden State, the Nets, Miami, all teams that have been injury tested throughout this year made the playoffs or are in the play-in game, except for one, the Lakers. They were obviously injury riddled throughout this season with an old roster, and the answer isn't to just simply run this back with a different coach that LeBron played with 5 or 6 years ago. The Lakers in the second half of this season have done worse than the tanking Portland Trailblazers, the openly tanking Portland Trailblazers. No minor tweak is going to fix this. The answer is not more of this. You can't just fire Vogel and give Quinn Snyder the job and expect it to be good. Westbrook is shot. LeBron will be in his 20th year, and AD is a piece of glass. All three have massive contracts as well. They need to blow this up. That we saw them play 21 games together, and it never clicked. In the last decade, AD has only played 70 games in a season twice. And you want more of that now? This leads me into an interesting viewpoint on what LeBron James is going through right now and the interesting predicament he has put himself in due to what he's done in his career. Now, I want to start with this. Remember, everyone, the NBA is much different than the NFL. In 2 seasons in the NFL, you can drastically change the landscape for your team. Look at the Cincinnati Bengals. In the NBA, it takes years to get back. That's why Portland's still tanking years later with a good roster, well, with Damian Lillard. Now let's take a look at LeBron's career. He had the stint with the Cavs to start with his hometown team, where when he left, the team sunk into misery until he returned years later. I'm going to brush over that part. Still, team sunk into misery. That's starting the chain of things that are similar. Next, he went to the Heat, where we see him in Miami with Bosh, D-Wade, and other aging stars. This is when it really begins. All of them are on big deals. They could all go out and win championships, and they did just that. LeBron won 2 in his 4 years with the Heat. But then LeBron up and left when people openly admitted D-Wade was blindsided by it. The Heat's owner was blindsided by it. Many people were not expecting LeBron to leave. But then LeBron left after everyone thought he was going to stay, and the Heat sunk for a few years due to being bogged with these old players in these heavy contracts. Like I said, it takes longer to reset in the NBA. Next up, he's back with the Cavs, and they began to pull themselves out of what he left them in, with the drafting of Kyrie Irving. And again, LeBron surrounded himself with guys around the league that he knew and he liked. Oftentimes veterans on bigger deals who would get hurt. And after 4 years again, he got him a championship like LeBron does. LeBron's going somewhere. He's promising you a championship. But then 4 years go by. LeBron saw the writing on the wall, saw the books, knew this wasn't going to work out for him. And the Cavs sunk for years, only now to have just resurfaced. So that adds on to our trend. And now with the Lakers, he finds himself stuck. This is the oldest roster he has ever played on, and it's the oldest roster in the league. It's with all of his buddies, and the cap for them is screwed, especially with Westbrook's deal. But LeBron doesn't want to leave. He said himself, he loves LA. His family loves LA. His kids are in school there. It's his forever home. He has friends there. Odell moved there part because LeBron was there. LeBron has now found himself trapped in the very thing he has been doing to teams his entire career. After 4 years, teams, market-wise, cap-wise, can no longer take the LeBron effect. The GM bringing in whoever he wants to, these veterans on old big deals. The Lakers got their championship out of them. But now they have to essentially blow up this team in order to have a chance. He goes to a location, brings his guys, basically guarantees you a championship or two, and then once he leaves you, you'll be stuck with money and injury issues for years. Except now, LeBron finds himself where his son is going to be drafted in a few years, and he wants to go play with his son, so he doesn't want to change teams again, then go change teams again, and just be a flip-flop. Found himself liking LA, liking his guys, all that, and now he's stuck with this Lakers team. LeBron may have averaged 38-6 this season, but it's obvious he's not the same king anymore that can will a team to the finals. He's still one of the greatest players on the floor. But in my opinion, this started last season in the playoffs versus the Suns. LeBron is not the same man who can single-handedly team on his back, get you to the finals, and maybe even win it for you. It's just not the same anymore, and now LeBron finds himself trapped in what he's been doing to teams for years. The final thing I want to talk about today before I get out of here is a little bit of Masters talk for you guys. You guys know that's going on this week. I'm sure you guys have all seen Tiger Woods is playing. He is back to competing in professional golf, and he made the cut. I'm recording this on Saturday. He tees off today at 1 o'clock. He made the cut at 1 over. What Tiger is doing this weekend is nothing short of incredible and possibly one of the greatest comeback stories the world has ever seen. After that brutal car accident that could have been fatal, for him to be back here, it's jaw-dropping and inspiring. Now, the question I started thinking about earlier this week, when the Masters came up, everybody's talking about Tiger, and obviously there's this Tiger effect. He draws us, he captures us, brings us to the TV, and for hours, people are sitting there watching golf and are excited, their hearts bumping, and they want to see Tiger. What captures us about Tiger? Why do we love him as much as we do? He came in as a young hot shot with a lot of confidence and cockiness, which oftentimes people resent. He threatened a beloved great in Jack Nicklaus. Just ask LeBron how that's going for him and threatening Michael Jordan's legacy. Tiger came in cocky, confident, threatening a beloved great, had all the money in the world, had the chicks, had the front covers of Sports Illustrated, was on commercials, had everything. Folks, majority of time, people have a little bit of resentment towards those types of guys. But there have only been 2 athletes ever, I think, that have had this power on a community of people, despite the fame, despite the fortune, despite everything they might have, that when they're on the television, you can't turn them off. You can't look away. And the internet swirls with just their name. The 2 athletes are Tiger Woods and Michael Jordan. They have a power on a community like no one else ever has. I'm going to tell everyone why. Jordan started off at the top of the world, just like Tiger did. He won 3 straight titles. He had everything, had scoring titles, had things like that. And then he left basketball, struggled with baseball. His father was murdered. And then he came back and was worshipped more than ever. Tiger Woods had a decade stretch in golf where he won more than anyone else ever has. He did things that were unimaginable in all of sports, and he had all the money to show for it. Then his father died. He went through hell with his body, had a spinal fusion, an ACL tear, more back surgeries, a devastating car accident, got a DUI, and came back to us waiting for the return of a legend. What I'm saying here, folks, is what compels us to guys like Tiger and guys like Michael Jordan is a sense of similarity. We love you even more when you go through the shit that we go through. Tiger Woods and Michael Jordan were at the top of the world. No one could touch them. And then they were knocked back down to size. And they were humbled. They realized that they weren't above everybody, that there were rules, were consequences, and that their life doesn't always go your way. And yet, these athletes, these warriors, Tiger Woods and Michael Jordan, they came back, they battled back, and got back to winning and inspiring people. That's why every time Tiger Woods is on the television screen playing golf, especially on Sunday in red, it is like the gospel speaking from our television, and no one can turn away from it. You can be at the top of the world. But when you go through the stuff that ordinary people have to go through and can still make it back to the top and can still be a leader and represent something bigger than yourself, that's an impact in sports that only 2 players have ever had, and it's something that no one should ever take for granted. Even if Tiger does not win the Masters this weekend, he could not make top 10. Still, we're all going to be watching on Sunday, and we're all going to be captured and mesmerized by Tiger Woods and the story that he has come to give us. Thank you, Tiger. It has been something like none of us could have ever imagined, and you're the story that keeps on giving. Thank you all so much for tuning in to another edition of The Adam Eisen Show. Be on the lookout for episode 26 come next Saturday. Before then, be sure to check out my Instagram at The Adam Eisen Show, TikTok as well, got Spotify. You're not going to want to miss anything I post on there. Peace.